APA. Um, there are lots of different videos on different angles for approaching APA, and this one is sort of loosely based around a Session 2 quiz for English 103, but I think that the key points that we're going to talk about and the strategies for sort of supporting our growth and our confidence with APA are useful for absolutely everyone. So why do we do things like this? Why are we having APA discussions? Some of you come into class and you have used MLA, so Modern Language Associations, formatting resources. I started with those as well, and it took me quite a bit of sort of growth and effort to figure out what APA was doing. And then I also started to work with Chicago Manual of Style and with MHRA. I don't even know what those letters stand for right now. It's just that you get these sets of information of things that you're supposed to work on with formatting, and you do them. So why do we do that? Well, formatting isn't about APA or about a particular class or a particular person. It's about how we're communicating efficiently and how we're meeting requirements. So you may notice as you go through my classes, especially, that I push really hard for you to make a difference between what you would see in, say, a blog post or an online post and what we actually put in a paper. Because what we're doing in business documents, what we're doing in papers for class, these are really, really different scenarios. So for instance, if you're online and you look up a topic, they'll often have hyperlinks. They will add lots of information within the paragraph about who they're citing, what organization that person is working for, what credentials that person has. They're adding all of that because they do not have a formatting style. They do not believe that you will go down to the end of whatever blog you're reading or whatever article and that you will look for formatting style and references, and they don't believe anyone will track any of that down. So when we're writing a paper or we're working at a company, there are going to be set formatting styles so that everyone is on the same page. And the aim of that, sort of the baseline, is just that it's a lot easier. It's a lot more comfortable for all of us if we know sort of where to look, how to approach it, and what details we should focus on. So let's go talk about which steps we want for APA 7. One, we want to focus on the details, especially when you're doing that quiz, if that's why you're here for this video. But we do want to think about it just in general, especially periods and commas, but also punctuation and capitalization throughout. These elements are really, really key to what's happening with any of these formatting styles. Honestly, I feel like just that particular element of like where do the periods go is one of the key transition items when I'm moving from formatting style to formatting style. So for my quick study guide, that's often something I include because I know that I'm going to be like, oh, which one? Well, Chicago did this and APA did that, and I'm going to get hung up on that. So on my quick guide, I make that a clear like note for myself. And we are going to look at my quick guide before we're done with this little video. So in-text citation, this is going to look different than our reference. The aim of in-text citations for all of these different formatting styles, not things that are on a weblog or on the internet, is that we do not want to interrupt the flow of content. We want our readers to be thinking about what's happening. What are we doing? How are we approaching it? What are we exploring? That means that there are only 3 things we ever want to see in a citation. We want it to be as minimal as possible because we're talking content and information. And we're giving these little clues because those clues are going to tell our reader exactly where to go on the reference page. That's an expectation that they will scroll to the end of a work, that they will flip all the pages and go to the references. So in our citations, we're looking for an author's last name. We're going to look at some caveats. That could be a group or an organization or multiple authors. But we're only looking at those last names because, again, we don't want all the initials. We don't want all of this extra stuff. Very rarely will we ever need to mention why we've chosen a particular person. There are going to always be exceptions. So sometimes we may want to say, oh, we looked at this person or we're talking to that person because they have X credential. But that is going to be exceptionally rare. So if you find yourself saying, oh, I need initials, or I need to put their honorifics or their credentials, you should immediately feel some red flags. You should say, well, why am I feeling that? I need a really, really exceptionally good reason for it. We want the year of publication, and for APA 7, this also means, I'm going to add this here, that if we do not have the date, we use N period D period, and that stands for no date, so that we don't have a date to include. Notice that I said year of publication. Plenty of works, like especially if we're looking at a newspaper or something, they're going to tell us, oh, this was, Monday, September 12th of 2022. They're going to give us all these extra bits of information. We are only putting the year, because remember, we want minimal disruption to content. And if possible, this is the one that's a real outlier, because we are sort of transforming as a society from just books to all kinds of different formats of PDFs and webs, pages, and all these different things, and videos. So the location may or may not be available. It obviously is generally a page or a paragraph, but it could be a minute and a second. So if we had a video, we could share that information. But we often don't have this. So when we don't have an author, we're going to have some exceptions. We're going to use most likely the title of the work. When we don't have a date, we use ND, which is the abbreviation of no date, as added above. No one notices that. It's a weird factor for APA. MLA would just be like, there's no date, and they wouldn't put it in a citation. But APA 7 is like, oh, we're adding that to our citation. So you will always have two things, who and when. And then where is going to be kind of open. We often don't have it, that location. If it's going to take a lot of effort, like I like to think of like my sort of 1 minute, 5 minute, 10-minute rules. If it's going to take me 1 minute to find the location, I just need to look at the page number, absolutely include that location. If it's going to take me 5 minutes to find, like, count through all the paragraphs to figure out which paragraph it could be, then I probably don't need to do that. If it's going to take me 10 minutes to track down all these pieces, then absolutely I should leave them out. So here are some examples. Sometimes we can put things like the author within the sentence, which is really helpful, especially when we're talking about what that author is saying. So here we have Lewis, here we have McGrath, and we can put it before or after the quote we're going to use. APA, because of that location factor, because we often don't know where exactly something is, what they often do is they put, say, the author at the start of the sentence, and then they put the date beside the author. So I could even say, like, according to Lewis, 1980, The Land Beyond Narnia, blah, blah, blah. But I'm almost always going to put that key detail that's the first line of my APA reference and the date together. And if I'm lucky and I know where for our page or paragraph or minute, I'm going to put P for page, PP for pages, para for paragraph, and paras for paragraphs, and the location. However, as you can see, I could kind of flip that. If I put my quote as the start, and then I put McGrath's name in the sentence, and then I put, because we were ending, both the date and the page number together. There are a couple of ways to tackle these. Part of my study guide support that I'm going to give you at the end of this video is all about figuring out something that you're comfortable with. So I tend to do this setup. I put the author's name, I put the date, and then if I have the location, I use it. So I tend to do my sentences that way. It doesn't mean I have to use the word describe every time. There are different variations, but I focus on one process, and I say, okay, until this process is just easy as pie, it's super simple, until I'm really, really comfortable, I could do it, without thinking about it, I'm going to keep doing that one. As I get comfortable, I may expand and say, oh, I could switch it around. But find something that feels good to you, that feels comfortable with your voice, and use that over and over and over until you are so confident that you feel you can switch it up. And here are some more. So in this case, I put the quote in, and I put Lewis and the year here in the citation, but I didn't put a date, a location. Here, I did the same thing. I took that location out because we may not have that, remember? And I put in the author within that citation as well. So variables, like there are different ways to tackle these. So then let's switch gears before we head back to looking at more details and look at references. Would we, based on the clues we leave ourselves, would we be able to find that work a year from now? So let's say I use a website and I come back a year later and I'm like, oh, I remember that website and I really liked what that paper was looking at. I want to look that up again. Could I find it? Did I leave enough clues for myself? Remember, especially for websites, that the URLs can change very quickly. Just one sort of digit off, if we have an S and then we remove that S, we could completely not find that website again. So, do I have enough clues besides just a web link? And then, two, think about the larger concept of this. We are obviously doing smaller papers, and it's not going to be really tricky to find your 3 references. But we are preparing for the future. And the future says, you know what, you may have a page of references, or you keep going, you may have 20 pages of references, in which case you need to be ready. The other side of that is that when you read larger works, so when you get a book that you're looking at that has lots of details, you know how to navigate the references as well so that you can find more that you want to explore. So our references are again going to start with some of the information that was in our citation. The whole point of them starting in the same location is that we want to be able to say, okay, I read this quote, it said Lewis 1980. So the moment I come down to the references, I will see a reference with Lewis and I will see 1980. I may see additional information, so I would see Lewis, comma, C period, S period for C.S. Lewis, and then that year of publication could expand. It could say 1980, comma, December 14th. Who knows? It could expand, it most likely will, but those key elements are going to be right there, and I'm going to say, that's the one I'm looking for. And then I'm going to get extra information. I may see those initials. I may see more information about the date. I will now have the title of the work, the publisher. If there's an easy to use link, then I will use it. You may notice that we stop here at publisher. In the past, APA 6 and before, we had to locate that publisher. So we had to say, well, my copy was printed in New York and your copy was printed in London, and I need to make that differentiation. Nowadays, we just don't do it. Things are so much more fluid between anywhere in the world. So now we just put the publisher, like Norton. That's all we're going to say. Not Norton US, not Norton Europe. We're just going to put Norton. So let's look at some samples. So here we have a book, a website, and a journal. I'm going to stop here at the website because, as you can see, we have lots of key elements. Price, 2018, March 23rd. So in our citation, we would just have price and 2018. We most likely wouldn't use a paragraph because we wouldn't have page numbers on a website. So we would probably have paragraphs, and those aren't always easy to navigate. So we probably would just use price in 2018 for that citation. So something I'm going to point out right here is that we do not have retrieved on. Like in older citation forms, we would say, oh, well, I went to this website on January 6th of 2015. I went to this website on a specific day. But nowadays, we just really don't tend to do that. Again, we're saying what information is useful. Do you feel that this website is really changeable, that they are constantly updating and editing and altering? If that's the case, if you feel like it could very well change tomorrow, so maybe it's the breaking news page of the BBC. Well, that's going to change every day, isn't it? There's going to be new breaking news. So I may say, well, I retrieved this on such and such a day, because you know that there may be new information, there may be a different website. We need to let our readers know. But 9 times out of 10, that's not what you're researching, that's not what you're citing or referencing, and so we're just going to throw that website in. And if this website changes, people can look up price, they can look up the title of the article, and they can look up the website where it is. So there are so many options for that reader or you years later to go back and find the pieces. So here for this journal article, we have retrieved January 12th, 2020. So we have those sometimes, but we need to ask, why would we? Is it going to be a case where I think this is going to change, where I think it's important, or not? With a lot of these sort of caveats that I'm giving you, part of what you're doing is you are saying, if someone asks, what would I say? Would I say, oh, I didn't put that in because I didn't know that was supposed to go in? Or would I say, I didn't put that in because I don't believe that website is super changeable. I think that, especially at Medium, they don't tend to alter these pages a lot. I don't think that's going to change, and I've given lots of good detail. However, this one, and then give your reasoning for why you think it would change. So you may have noticed that I just had 3 examples, right? Book, website, and journal article. Well, part of what we're going to think about is our study guide, our quick guide. So each one of us, that could look a lot alike. It could look very, very different. It's about what we tend to utilize and what we tend to forget. So obviously that has changed for me. When I was 20, I didn't need as many of these study guides. And now I need a lot of these study guides. I need these quick ones. So start with mine, see what you like, and never hesitate to make me help you. So the questions you're going to ask yourself are things like, what do you tend to use and what do you tend to forget? So I tend to be looking at all of your works and finding that you're citing books, websites, and journals. And so I have those as my key elements so that I can support you. But yours may be different. So a study guide or a quick guide is sort of like an open book test. I love open book tests because they are extremely strenuous and they're very important for not just the information itself, but for the fact that you can find the information. We will never know we will never know everything. But if we know how to find everything, then we're in a much better position. So, what do you not need on the study guide that I put on there that you're like, oh, I know that, like that's silly? And what would you add? What would you alter and change? So let's go look at some pieces. I think I want to go here first. So here's my study guide for sort of that initial element. And what I'm looking at is saying, what kind of tips and tricks can I give? What kind of supports? So some ideas. Always use a template to start your papers. We're going to look at what needs to be on a paper for like a title page and references. Go ahead and make that template. I also love to include some possible references. I try to keep those samples, the book, the website, the journal article, on that template so that I can go look and be like, oh, it's already here. I can mirror that information onto whatever I'm actually using. And of course, you're using these selections as ones that are useful to you and as links and supports. So on your template, all you have to do each time is open it and copy or duplicate it. And then you rename it with what you're doing that time. So if you started with, say, the session 4 revision of the session 3 literary analysis for 103, you would name it after that item. But hey, you're going on to other classes and you say, well, I still need a template. I still need a title page. I still need reference samples. So I'm going to duplicate or copy this template, and you can already have it have your name. You can have it have elements that you know you're going to always keep, and then you rename it with the new items and you insert the information you need. For me, that also means that I have copies of these that are easy to find. I can find them by class, I can find them by session. It gives me that opportunity. So, for instance, in English 201, when we're looking at literature, we have an open book exam for the final exam, and so you need to be able to access all of your reading responses from the whole entire semester. So if you have them all named, so you've put in English 102 and you put, week 3 reading response, that is super accessible and easy for you to find when you get to that final exam. Okay, so here's the citation point that I made. When we want those 3 things, we want to give some examples. So as I said, I have sort of my go-to, and then from there I alter as I see fit. So start with what you like. These are mine. You can use them, or you can say, no, I don't like those at all. You can pick however you'd like, but come up with some samples, some examples of what things could look like. I love according to. I have no idea why. I like that. I think it sounds nice. So you could say, so-and-so states and then date. So pick something you like, create those samples so that you can always go back to them. So as you can see here, I have examples with authors, more than one author. I have examples with the title of a work because it's by anonymous. I have examples with an organization with no date. I made a set of really common issues, and I made those samples as templates and as actual articles to look at. These are fake, of course, but you get the idea. And I made those so that I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think, well, how does that work? What should that look like? Instead, I know that if I have multiple authors and I put their names in a sentence, that I use the word and, but that if I have multiple authors in a reference or citation, I use an ampersand. So I've made those samples for myself to help me get further. I love the Purdue OWL as well for references and citations. So here's a quick link to go to, but I often just type in Purdue OWL. So there's Purdue OWL and then APA, and then I'll just type in what I'm looking for. So like a reference or citation and get those supports. And then I made samples. So as you already see, we saw some of these like Ahmed and Price, but a dictionary, that is a big one. A lot of times we're going to use something like that. As you can see, I decided on that dictionary one to go ahead and include the retrieved from. But for some words, we may feel like, you know what, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And so we wouldn't necessarily need that. But we're looking through each of these ideas and saying, you know, what does it look like? So a journal article online and with these specific items, a journal article without them. So those concepts and ideas. Gonna scroll through that. But as you can see, it gives me a really good sort of walkthrough. Maybe there are other things that you find you use more. I know that a book and a website are going to be really common, and I know that there are lots of different forms websites take. So I have 4 different examples of what websites could look like because I want to support all of you. Then I have that dictionary or group as an author because they're going to be similar. So I'm looking for those samples that are going to help me and help you. So you too can do that. So let's look through some of these reasons. Periods mark the end of something, or they let us know that something is gone. So when we put in period, it means that it's not just a letter in. It means that it's a stand-in, that something is missing from it. So when we put in period, D period, it's immediately like, oh, well, that's not just letters in D. They forgot to, add an A for the word and. It means that something is clearly missing. And then that lets us know, oh, it probably stands for something. It's probably an abbreviation. And then we can go look that up. Commas separate items that are part of the same group. So a journal volume and issue number, those are part of the same thing. They are far apart in terms of an author versus a journal when we have those sort of larger items. And spaces. Most people are doing this really well, probably 99%. I remember when it switched for me and I really struggled to stop putting that double space between sentences. And now it is set in stone that that's our new normal, that we are not to do the double spacings. So if you find that you are doing the double space between sentences, what I did to stop all of that for myself is that I would practice, obviously, but I would also do the find feature. And then I would look for space, space, and I would replace it with 1 space. So all of those are options for checking things out. Capitalization. So proper names, obviously, are going to get capitalized throughout, but in general, we're going to capitalize after a colon. So as you can see here, postmodernism, that's capitalized, it's the first word. In contemporary Western literature, nothing else is capitalized. This one, the, capitalized because it's the first word. Rising tide of economic volatility. And then let's look down here. The specter at the feast, disabled people, and social theory. So we have the, because it's the first word, and then we have our colon, and after the colon, we capitalize the first word. But what if we said something here like a case study of John Doe? So you could see that after the colon, we would need a capital, but if we had a specific person or organization, a case study at the Mayo Clinic, because that's a specific location, a specific place, a proper name. So look for those kinds of elements. And again, that could be something that you're really comfortable with and you're like, oh, I'm good. But it could be something where you're like, I get hung up on these particular elements. Add those to your reference guide, your citation guide. Sometimes our abbreviations are going to be a little tricky. So ND obviously is 2 words. We've got rid of the O and the ATE. However, if there is more than one author, when we're doing our citations, we are most likely, after 3 authors, we're going to do et al. Well, it's short for et alia, which is and all. So et is not abbreviated. It's exactly as it is. And Alia, we took out 2 letters, so we need to put that period. So watch those kinds of things as well. I found myself just sort of thinking, oh, ET period, AL period, just because I was thinking about no date, and I had to add it to my notes to make sure I wasn't doing that. Another small but important thing is looking at fonts. We have a range of sizes. We can use 10, 11, or 12, but be cautious with that font. We want stuff that's not difficult to read in general. Times New Roman, Helvetica, Arial, these are all really, really good. And spacing them, make sure you're double spacing them. Our title page, it should have the title, an extra space between, and then all of these items. Your name, where we are, the course name. So think about that copy of a template. You could have your name in it. You could have your university in it. You're good to go with those. And then you would just need to change the course, instructor, and assignment based on what exactly you're working on. Also notice that the title is in bold. A thing to remember is that we used to have really difficult and annoying headers for APA 6 and below. We had to have a running head, we had to have information in the headers. All we need now in a header is a page number, and it goes in the upper right. So these are sort of the overall key items to think about. We want our title page and our references page, so the first and the last. We're going to use this plural, references. Even if there's only one reference, we're going to use the word references as the top of our reference page in bold. We want to watch those in-text citations. I mention this because some things like Chicago will use footnotes, and so we would just put a number and we would go on and then you'd look at the footnote for it. But APA has very sort of odd rules for if you're going to be using footnotes, so it's just not something that you should in general be utilizing like at all. So look for those in-text citations. That page number should be in the upper right corner, and we really need those 1-inch margins all around it. Sometimes you'll look at a template and you'll find that it has lots of cool things like subheaders. If your paper is under 5 to 10 pages, you really don't need subheaders. You should be using transitions within your sentences to go from paragraph to paragraph. And some of those templates are going to give us things like an abstract. Well, if our paper again is under 10 pages, we probably don't need that. It's not something that we should put in unless we are specifically asked to add it. Paragraph formatting is a little tricky because Microsoft Word is going to quote unquote help you. So they have decided in all of their templates to set everything up as a business letter, which uses block formatting. That's again a reason I want you to think about a template, because you can set this in your template and then keep duplicating that template and you don't have to redo this whole system. If you don't use that template, you're going to need to go in and select all. You're going to need to go to formatting and paragraph and check that space both before and after and set it to 0. Because what it does is it sets the space before to 0 and the space after to 8 points. And that's how we get that extra space between paragraphs. But we're not doing that in APA. We're going to indent the first line of each paragraph, and we're not going to have random extra spaces. In-text citations, we want to watch those periods. So when we're looking at this example, so we have Lewis out there, the author out there in the sentence, we have that year beside him, and then we have part of our sentence, we have the quote, and we end the quote. So I want you to look right in here. We end this quote with our quotation marks. We put the location because we had it, and then the period goes here. This period tells your reader that everything from here to here is part of the same sentence, that it's all connected. If we put a period here, we're hanging that out. We're saying, oh, well, page 248, it could go to the next sentence. It becomes a really odd space. We want to make sure that it's really clear that that period says all of what happened before this, prior to the last period or the last question mark, is part of the same set of information. So all of these have that period at the very end. Even if this is the end of a sentence, in the original, it ended with the word day. Well, we're still not using that period because we've taken that quote out and we put it into our sentence, and we're going to put that period outside of it. And what about those locations? So here are some tips to help you. Obviously, there are different ways that we can tackle these. These are sort of my starting point. If paragraph numbers are visible, go for it. That's amazing. If there are no paragraph numbers, You can look at the headings. You can look at the number of the paragraph following that heading. So you could say, locations period 1, and that would let someone know, para 1, that would let them know where to go. If you really don't have anything clear, no paragraph numbers or headings, there's a short title for the passage maybe. If you're really struggling with those elements, then just don't include it. Remember that 1 to 5 minute rule. If this is going to take you another 5 to 10 minutes to go try to navigate it and hope you get it right, then do not include it. So here we have an example, page 4, paragraph 4, pages, PP, 4 through 7, paragraphs 4 through 7. And that will help our reader. But remember, especially with a lot of this, we're going to be online, or we're going to have ways to locate it ourselves, so we don't need to try to find, paragraph 240, because our reader, that's not going to help them easily locate it. That's going to be exhausting, and they could use a find feature online instead. We're almost there. Okay, so here are some samples to watch for, because we're looking at what we could and maybe not include if we're looking at references. So if you're taking, say, a quiz and you're working on these ideas, I'm underlining the parts of the examples that are wrong. So if we're given this information, we're looking at our work and we say, well, Abby Cloud wrote it. She wrote it, published it on December 5th, 2019. The title of the article is Keeping Hippos Healthy. That wouldn't work for our reference, would it? Those capital letters. The website is Hippo Health, and the URL is Happy Health Hippos. So here in this first one, we have Cloud, Abby. That's why we've underlined this, because we don't want full names, do we? We want initials. We could say a lot about this person. Maybe Abby has an MFA, Master's of Fine Arts. We aren't going to put it here. We're not going to put it in the references. We just want a last name, Cloud, and we want that first initial. So we don't want that. Notice the things that are good. We have the year, 2019, and the month and day. So when we transfer that to its citation, we would take the 2019. We have Keeping Hippos Healthy and Hippo Health. But something is missing there, isn't it? Let's go back and look at our website part. Oops, wrong one there. Sorry, I'm pausing it, sort of. There's so many things. Okay, I'm going to get that study guide going. Okay, so remember this website one? They treat the title of the article as sort of a book, and that website reference as the publisher. So it looks like I messed up, didn't I? Because I should have this, not the publisher, but the article as the italicized area. And then, let's see. And you notice we started working on that capitalization as well. That we didn't need all of it, we just needed a little. And that is obviously an organization name, sort of a proper noun in that sense. So now let's look at this next one. Cloud A, 2019, so we've got a good date going there. Keeping Hippos Healthy, retrieved from Hippo Health. Well, why does it say retrieved from? Especially in front of the title of the sort of web log or the website. If we did need retrieved from, we'd probably put it by the website itself, and then do we need that? Is there a really, really good indication? And obviously this isn't giving us that good indication. So since it doesn't tell us, hey, we really need it because they update it every week, then we don't want to include that extra information. So we would cross out retrieved from. And it didn't even have the date, so it's not helping anyone. Now let's look at this one. Oh, it only says 2019, but in this case, we know that we had some great extra information, December 5th. Obviously, in our in-text citation, we're just going to put 2019, but in the reference, we want as much info about that date as possible. Remember, my reference is all about if I come back in a year, could I find this again? So we don't want just that date, unless obviously if that's all we can find, that's what we're going to use. So here is our perfect example. Cloud A, that initial, the full date, 2019, December 5th. Notice that we have a period here after the name, so we've got her name set off. We have a period after the date, so that's done. Then we have the title of the website, Keeping Hippos Healthy, and another period. Then we have Hippo Health, which is the location, so that would be like Vogue or Good Housekeeping. That's the organization or group publishing it. And then we have the link. We don't need extra stuff about that link, we just need that. So we got through looking at those samples and ideas to find what's right. Some other things to watch for: left margin. So we want to be able to run our finger down the left margin and find all the key details. That means that we indent everything else. So that first line is up against the left margin and everything else is indented. Why? Because we want to see cloud. So if I see all of that, that sort of disjoints it. It means that I see happy health hippos and all of those kinds of things. I want that tabbed over so that I can go along this line and see all of the names. Obviously these are the same, but what if there were 4 different ones here? I don't want anything getting in the way. Remember, alphabetical. Obviously it's tricky for us because we tend to have 3 to 5 references. But what if there were 10? What if there were 50? What if there were 300? We need to have them alphabetical so that it's easy to go through. Someone was reading your work, you quoted McGrath, and they said, oh, MCG. And they go to that page and they run their finger along that left margin, and there it is. It's easy to find alphabetically. Referencing format. So APA 7 has up into the universe and that they have decided to cite the Bible. The reason this is problematic overall is because the Bible has always previously, and does for every other formatting style, fall under classics. There are so many versions and so many possibilities that we just say, oh, it's Hebrews 12. And everyone knows that they can pick up any Bible anywhere, look up Hebrews 12, and get the same information. Well, APA 7 has said, you know what, there are a lot of versions and a lot of publications like this, 1973 versus 2011. So they are now including that. It's a really big shift, and they are the only people doing this. So it's a big, big shift for doing that. Again, look at the templates that I share with you in the Student Lounge because I include multiple references for the Bible. And I also have another video under how to navigate Bible websites to find the information you need. So the publisher has now become quite possibly part of it. We don't want where they are, so I don't care what city they're in or state, but I am looking for who. So Zondervan, InterVarsity, Ghost Road, I'm looking for who they are. But I'm not going to say Zondervan, Tennessee. I'm not going to add any extra info about it. So part of what we also are talking about with these references and in-text citations is that we don't want to plagiarize. We want everyone to know where to find things. We want them to feel really confident about our work and who we're citing and referencing. If we do end up in plagiarism with that sort of sequence, there are consequences, and it's important to know. So a consequence of plagiarism being determined is a 0 on the assignment. Some of those forms of plagiarism are things like obtaining an unfair advantage, fabrication, which obviously is pretty much the same as cheating or lying, or aiding and abetting. I remember years ago where a person said, well, could you just write that paper for me? And I would be aiding and abetting plagiarism if I did that. It was absolutely shocking to me that they would say that aloud. But stress and anxiety and fear can often lead to those kinds of reactions. I want to talk about this before we go today because we often feel like, oh, well, those people plagiarize. There is some sort of group of people or a person who just chooses to cheat, chooses to do wrong. Most plagiarism is accidental. Most plagiarism is us forgetting to add one of these details. I don't put the date in. Well, I have just inappropriately done a reference and I've plagiarized. On the back of that, there's a very, very strong difference between the person who forgot to put a date in, the person who didn't put the right punctuation, and the person who willfully chose to present someone else's work as his or her own. Obviously, I've been doing this for a while, and we're looking at over 12 or plus years, and that is a lot of students and a lot of different assignments And yes, there have been instances of the plagiarism that I'm talking about with the 99% of everyone, it's just accidental. And when that happens, I say, hey, like, here's what we should be using. We should put a period there, or we should put the name there, or we should watch that typing. We want to make sure we say exactly what that person said when we share their quote. Only a fraction of the 1% left over have actually been plagiarism. And obviously, I talk to them. I don't just immediately run screaming into the hills. I say, hey, we need to have a chat. This is a lot more plagiarism than an accidental element. Like, what's going on? And yes, there are times where I have talked to a person and there is fear and anxiety, and they don't feel confident, and they feel like they are just not good enough to tackle these things. And we are able to talk, we are able to work together, and I see them, I'm gonna cry. I see them just run out there and do great, great things. And so it's not an issue of reports and dean's lists and all these other things. But on occasion, yes, indeed, someone does plagiarize. And those rules for that, when they tell me, oh, no, I haven't. And I say, well, here's all the proof. And they say, Or they say, well, I'll work on it. And then they do it again. When those kinds of things are happening and it is escalating, then absolutely there are serious consequences. And it breaks my heart to see that, because I think that we can all understand that anxiety of doing it wrong, and we can all understand that fear, and we can all support one another, but we absolutely cannot just let that slide. We have to work together, and we have to support each other. So if you accidentally plagiarize, which is going to happen, I'm sure I've done it as well, where I just put the wrong item in, or I put the wrong phrasing, all kinds of different things happen. We work together to solve that. Actual plagiarism of stealing and trying to make it yours is rare, and it is heavily prosecuted. But most of the time, none of you are going to be in that group. So just know that you're learning, you're trying, and you're asking questions, and that is absolutely wonderful and the best steps to take. So go check out the Student Lounge, where I like to share things like my study guide, and ask for support. We can make you your very own of things that you want to do. You can have your samples and examples of things you like to say versus my according to, although you are absolutely welcome to it. I think it's a fun way to say it, and it's used heavily all throughout the world. So look at those ideas, see those samples, and see what you would like to do and how you'd like to make APA work for you.